All right, y'all. So I saw a clip of this on TikTok. I thought it was super interesting. So this is, you remember Bishop Marianne, the one that did the service and Trump was there and then Trump was interviewed afterwards and he said it was a terrible service or something like that. So she's being interviewed by Face the Nation with Archbishop of Washington, Wilton Cardinal Gregory. And the reason why I wanted to watch a portion of this was because I saw that they were talking about reproductive rights. And Bishop Marianne specifically had a very interesting perspective when it comes to reproductive rights. But also, they had an interesting conversation from a political standpoint that I wanted to highlight and that I wanted to discuss as well. All right. So I haven't seen the full extent of what we're about to watch. So a lot of this I'm going to be reacting to with y'all in real time. I'm going to start here, though. So there was a question that was posed, and just for a little bit of deeper context, this was March 31, 2024. So I believe at this point in time, Biden was still the candidate on the Democratic side. So it's Biden against Trump. So that's why they're kind of talking about Biden and, the political side of it, of him being a presidential candidate. At this point in time, he had not dropped out yet. All right. So I'm going to start right here and then we're going to have a conversation. All right, let's go.
Neighbors.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier the divisions in this country. And I think part of what contributes to that is this sense that religion and politics have become far more intertwined than in years past. And it's driven by various forces. And I guess I wonder first how the two major candidates we have running for president invoke Christianity. I know this gets a little tricky, but we have one who is now selling Bibles that also have copies of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights in them. But the other is the second Catholic president who goes to church every Sunday, who observes the holy days of obligation and builds his schedule around them, but doesn't talk at all publicly and is uncomfortable speaking about his own faith. I
legit did not even know that Biden was a Catholic. Like, because I had heard them talking about a little bit about it during the campaign, but throughout the entire presidency, I didn't hear him talk really anything about God. At least, I mean, I'm sure he mentioned it, but for somebody to be devout in that way and to, be in the church and, seemingly have a relationship in that way and have it be something that's primary in your life, you would think that it would just kind of flow out of you, which is interesting that we hardly heard anything about it. You know what I'm saying? Also, from Trump's standpoint, I didn't like the whole Bible thing either. I thought that was very weird. I thought that was very strange. I'm not sure who instructed him that it was a good idea to start selling Bibles, but that was a very bad move, in my opinion. But let's continue.
I guess my first question is: are you comfortable with the level, or with the role and the level of Christianity in our politics today?
I think one of the things that we're experiencing is that faith and politics have always had a strange affiliation, but it's switched now. Whereas faith used to be the voice, the moral voice that political people, whether they adhered to everything, they would turn to find the moral compass with faith. I think in some cases, it's the political world that's beginning to set or claiming to set the moral voice. We've switched position. There is a great need, I believe, to place faith in its proper position, which is not necessarily antagonistic to the political arena, but to seize the responsibility of being that guiding principle, that moral light for our people to turn to. And that's been turned upside down in so many cases, too many cases.
I think that was actually a very good way to articulate it for the most part. I do. And I think a lot of it is what I talk about often is it seems like there's a lot of people who idolize politics, and they put that in the number one position. Whereas if we're believers, if we're Christians, Jesus should be, as he was saying, in his proper place. Jesus should be number one. You shouldn't idolize politics. You shouldn't worship politics. And if you're one of those people who idolize and worship politics, you probably don't even know you're doing it, because if you knew that you were doing it, then you wouldn't be doing it. You know what I'm saying? So obviously there's some blindness that is occurring, and it's causing a lot of people, I think, to have very hardened hearts. Now, I'm not telling you to compromise on the truth. We should be truth bearers. I'm not telling you to compromise on the truth. But this whole conversation of like, you're not a Christian if you're not conservative. You're not a Christian if you're not a Republican. This whole conversation is absolutely crazy to me. That's not the gospel. The gospel is not, contingent on your political affiliation. That's not the gospel. So I don't know where people get that from. You know what I mean? But at the same time, we can't compromise the truth, because we do live in a world, we live in an environment that has become very proficient at manipulating the truth and spinning it upside down and glorifying what is actually evil and wicked, and villainizing what is actually true and good. So we have to be very mindful of that as well. But anyway, I want to know what she's going to say. I'm very curious to hear her response.
Concerned about the way the message of Christianity is being distorted in our country right now. I think it's a cause for deep concern, and how the teachings of Christianity are being ignored by those who are claiming to speak as Christians in the public arena. And so I feel it's an abuse of the faith. And I have to be very careful, because I'm not perfect in my understanding of what it means, to be a perfect Christian. I'm not a perfect Christian, and I'm not a perfect American, but I think we are walking on very thin ice now. I would encourage anyone who buys a Bible to read the Bible, and in particular to read the teachings of Jesus, and then to set our policies, if we're going to call ourselves a Christian nation, against the highest aspirations that Jesus calls us to. And that would make us a Christian nation indeed, less than in uniformity. So I think we have some really, and I've had some conversations about Bibles and presidents, so I'm going to leave it there. But I feel that this is dangerous if it becomes, and I worry about those who associate Christianity with one expression that seems to be carrying the dominant tone of the discussion publicly. Right. So I'm going to do what I can in as friendly a way as possible to engage this year, especially as a person of faith.
But I can seek some clarity from both of you. The Bible belongs to everyone, right? That's the general tenet.
It belongs to two great faith traditions, our Jewish brothers and sisters and our Christian brothers and sisters. But the sacred writings of the Islamic world and of the Sikhs, they too have holy rights that belong to their tradition. Sure. And we have to be very careful in describing our nation so that we don't end up isolating people who are very much a part of this nation, have made tremendous contributions, but because they belong to a religion that is not as well known, perhaps, or sometimes put in conflict with other religious faiths, that's very dangerous.
In a democracy, faith serves the common good, full stop. If it serves the common good, it belongs in the public arena. If it doesn't belong there.
But is the Bible meant to be sold for profit?
No.
No.
And is it meant to appear with the text of the Bill and Rights and Constitution?
No.
And that's part of your concern?
That is part of my concern. And also, there are lots of concerns, but that I would say is the largest.
Okay, but also, just going back to the conversation of being like, what's the word? Tolerant is the first word that comes to my mind when it comes to like different belief systems. I don't know if that's the right word that I'm looking for, but going back to going back to the idea of other religions and respecting other religions and things of that nature. Here's the thing. We all have free will. I literally just talked about this in my last video that I posted about Marjorie Taylor Greene's ex-husband just going ballistic on those 3 Muslim women in the parking lot. We all have free will, but here's the thing: Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. If we're Christians, then that's it. You know what I'm saying? Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. He is. He's the way, the truth, and the life, right? No one comes to the Father except through him. So if we're believers and we subscribe to that, then we got to be about it. But at the same time, being about it doesn't mean that we're hateful. It doesn't mean that we are unnecessarily rude to other individuals that don't have that same belief, because ultimately they have free will to believe whatever they want to believe. If anything, as I said, I don't know why today just became, the theme of today has just been ambassadors of Christ. That has been the theme of today, I guess. But that is what we are called to do and called to be. We're called to be ambassadors of Christ so that he can make his petition through us, right? Through us. God wants to make his petition through us as believers so that people can see the light of God within us and be pointed to him for the forgiveness of their sins, for salvation. So we can't compromise on that at the same time. In us trying to be kind and loving and accepting, which I think, we should be, but on the same, token, we can't compromise the gospel because there's real souls that are at stake. There's real souls at stake. So I'll just say that and then we'll continue.
Cardinal, I appreciate that there's a reluctance to speak about any one specific Catholic, especially one that you've worshiped with. But in the case of the president, do you get a sense that his regular attendance and adherence to the faith resonates with American Catholics?
I would say that he's very sincere about his faith, but like a number of Catholics, he picks and chooses dimensions of the faith to highlight while ignoring or even contradicting other parts. There is a phrase that we have used in the past, a cafeteria Catholic. You choose that which...
I don't really know too much about Catholicism. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to learn more about it. But I appreciate, because I don't think they're necessarily like pro-Trump. I probably would definitely not put them in that category. If anything, I'd probably say they're more pro-Biden. But I appreciate their ability to be able to critique both sides and to be able to critique Biden as well. I do appreciate that.
Is attractive and dismiss that which is challenging.
Or, as Thomas Aquinas would say, you allow your conscience to guide you. Right?
Is there something on the menu he's not ordering, in your view?
Well,
so to speak?
I would say there are things, especially in terms of the life issues, there are things that he chooses to ignore, or he uses the current situation as a political pawn rather than saying, look, my church believes this. I'm a good Catholic. I would like to believe this, rather than to twist and turn some dimensions of the faith as a political advantage.
Just keep it a stack. He compromising on some stuff. Just keep it a stack. Just keep it a stack. Keep it a stack.
It's also possible to be a practitioner of the faith as a public leader and not require everyone that you lead in your country to be guided by all of the precepts of your faith, right?
And in my coverage of him, it seems that's what he believes.
That's what I would interpret.
Your concern is that he should be more explicit in his own personal belief, which is a personal opposition to abortion, but an understanding that as a public leader and in a free society, he's not to be placing that on everybody else.
Right. I'll just say that
Wait, hold on. We kind of got into some stuff kind of quick. Hold on.
But an understanding that as a public leader,
that's what he lead in your country to be guided by all of the precepts of your faith, right?
And in my coverage of him, it seems that's what he believes.
That's what I would interpret.
Your concern is that he should be more explicit in his own personal belief, which is a personal opposition to abortion, but an understanding that as a public leader And in a free society, he's
Right.
not to be
He's not to hold.
placing that on
He's not
everybody
to place
else.
that on everybody else.
Right.
I'll just say that I worship with the president when he comes to Washington National Cathedral, and I will say the one thing about him that I admire tremendously: there is not a funeral of a statesperson or a statesperson's spouse that he does not attend, stay through the entire service, and speak from the pulpit as in eulogy. And I find that example, I've never seen that before, and I find that example to be an expression of authentic faith. Doesn't mean I agree with him on everything, nor am I saying anything other than that he is a man of faith, and in a way that is lived, and at times when people aren't looking.
Yeah.
You know, when people
I mean,
aren't watching.
I'm curious, though, about whether his church-going, his faith, has resonated at all with fellow Catholics, because my sense of it is it hasn't necessarily. Is it supposed to? Should it matter? Is there any Biden effect in the pews, perhaps?
I would not put a lot of emphasis on that.
Okay.
He does attend church regularly with great devotion, but he also steps aside some of the hot button issues, or uses the hot button issues as a political tool, which it's not. It's not the way I think we would want our faith to be used. The issues of life begin at the very beginning, and they conclude at natural death. And you can't.
Yo, I'm sorry, y'all. I wasn't expecting to watch this much of the video. I don't know, but I'm like genuinely like interested in this conversation, so I'm gonna keep it rolling.
You can't pick and choose. You're either one who respects life in all of its dimensions, or you have to step aside and say, I'm not pro-life. I'm, in one side of the equation, I feel that I can support this dimension of life, but
Yo, she look like she don't agree with that. Yo, he low-key spitting some facts though. Like, you know what I'm saying? He's speaking on some real truth.
and others, I would step aside. My mentor, Cardinal
Oh,
Bernard,
she got something to say for sure.
for whom I was the auxiliary, he introduced a very important schema called the consistent ethic of life, which received some very hostile reactions from people who wanted to focus only at the beginning moments of life. But at other times in human life, they would be reticent, and they feel that to have this spectrum of respect disenfranchises that dimension of the life issues that they want to underscore.
Well, let's be specific. I love the spectrum of life. I think you can be an adherent of the spectrum of life and still respect a woman's right to choose her in reproductive health, and including when to have an abortion in the early stages of pregnancy. So I'll just say that as a Christian, I believe that that's possible, and still hold to the full spectrum of life. I think it's fascinating that those who are that in this Christian spectrum, that to be consistent would have some very significant things to say about the way we treat our children, the way we face poverty in this country, the way we treat people when they're imprisoned, the way we treat people at the end of life, whether or not we feel that the state can take life, all of those issues, which I think Bernardin was very consistent about, where I might respectfully say there are other perspectives in the Christian world, is that we might have some very interesting conversations about what to do in what is best for a woman in the early stages of pregnancy, or the issues that face women at that very tender time in life.
Hey, Archbishop. I see it in your eyes. Yo, AB, go off. No disrespect. I ain't trying to disrespect y'all. I'm saying AB because it sound cool. But Archbishop, I said the full thing. Hey, go off. I know you want to say something. Go off, please. Go off, please. Because it's crazy to me. We talk about, valuing life at every stage, right? In the womb, after birth, in old age, in sickness. We talk about valuing life, right? In every stage. But then, Bishop Marianne, she talking about, well, I support a woman's right to terminate in the early stage of pregnancy. So are you diminishing life because it's at an early stage. Therefore, you believe that a woman should be able to terminate that life because it's not developed to the point to where you recognize that like, well, I don't understand what we're saying here. I don't understand what we're saying here. I don't understand it. I don't understand it.
I wanted to ask you, we know in the case
He wanted to say something, but this dude just cut him off. He wanted to say something. Let's see if he's going to continue this conversation or completely change the subject.
of the president, he communicates occasionally with the Holy Father, with the Pope. Do you get any sense that the Pope conveys your frustrations to the president?
I would not be at all.
Okay, I'm very disappointed that he didn't allow that conversation to continue, because they genuinely had like a disagreement, and it wasn't on some like disrespectful stuff. But I wanted to see how they were going to work that out and articulate that. And I think they were going to, had he not changed the subject.
The way we treat people at the end of life.
Is that dimension step aside.
Let me play this again.
Okay.
He does attend church regularly with great, devotion. But he also steps aside some of the hot button issues, or uses the hot button issues as a political tool, which it's not the way I think we would want our faith to be used. The issues of life begin at the very beginning, and they conclude at natural death. And you can't pick and choose. You're either one who respects life in all of its dimensions, or you have to step aside and say, I'm not pro-life. I'm, in one side of the equation, I feel that I can support this dimension of life, but in others, I would step aside. My mentor,
Bro. Am I tripping, or was that not just like a very great explanation? Like, you're either pro life or you're not. You either respect life or you don't. Just because it's at a beginning stage, that doesn't mean you can sit here and say that it's like, no, it's illegitimate. Like, well, hold on. Doesn't the Bible say that, God knows us even before we're in our mother's womb? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, so what? So do we respect life? Do we respect the life giver, which is God, or do we not? Like, how are we going to say that we can have the ability to step in and choose to make those decisions just because it's at a beginning stage? Like, this is interesting.
Cardinal Bernardin, for whom I was the auxiliary, he introduced a very important schema called the consistent ethic of life, which received some very hostile reactions from people who wanted to focus only at the beginning moments of life. But at other times in human life, they would be reticent, and they feel that to have this spectrum of respect disenfranchises that dimension of the life issues that they want to underscore.
Well, let's be
I'm not exactly sure what that means. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you.
specific. I love the spectrum of life. I think you can be an adherent of the spectrum of life and still respect a woman's right to choose her in reproductive health, and including when to have an abortion in the early stages of pregnancy. So I'll just say that as a Christian, I believe that that's possible, and still hold to the full spectrum of life. I think it's fascinating that those who are that in the Christian spectrum, that to be consistent would have some very significant things to say about the way we treat our children, the way we face poverty in this country, the way we treat people when they're imprisoned, the way we treat people at the end of life, whether or not we feel that the state can take life, all of those issues, which I think Bernardin was very consistent about, where I might respectfully say there are other perspectives in the Christian world, is that we might have some very interesting conversations about what to do in what is best for a woman in the early stages of pregnancy, or the issues that face women at that very tender time in life.
He was finna say something. He was finna say something. It's a very interesting conversation. It's a very interesting conversation. Obviously, I disagree, with what Marianne is presenting. Um, but I've definitely been given some things that I haven't thought about before previously. You know, not to say I'm flipping or nothing like that, but even from the standpoint of like, you look at elderly people and like the respect that we have for, their life at those stages, and like, the ability to, end or terminate life at that age, that elderly age due to sickness or, whatever it may be. And it doesn't even necessarily have to be like at an elderly age. It could be just sickness or coma or, an accident at whatever age, and then our ability to, want to choose to terminate life in those situations too. Like, that's a very interesting conversation that I've never really pondered. Anywho, I'm curious to know what y'all think. Get in my comments, like this video. I'm out.